Fortune Cookie, thanks for a $5 super chat. M10 GPS issues fixed in Betaflight 442? No, I don't think so, Fortune Cookie. I believe it's 4.5 that will fix those issues. That's what I've been hearing. If it was fixed in 442, then it would be in the release notes. So that would be the actual way to answer that. But I think the answer is no. APN Films, thank you for a $5 super chat. When I try to do freestyle, like flying with my new Cinewhoop, it tends to freak out in the middle of a maneuver. Is this a tune issue or user error? Neither. APN Films. Cinewhoops are not great at acro flying, and many Cinewhoops, especially if they're heavily loaded with a GoPro and a big heavy battery, they will freak out in the middle of a highly aggressive maneuver. So it's that you have a Cinewhoop, I believe, is your problem. I mean, I'm not trying to overgeneralize or be flippant, but that it is true that, like, a lot of times Cinewhoops will deal really badly with prop wash oscillation, and they'll kind of and just kind of freak out. You can, if you are an experienced pilot and know how to kind of go easy on the sticks, you can kind of force a Cinewhoop to freestyle a little bit, but I am not surprised to learn that your Cinewhoop isn't responding well. The best thing you can do to get a Cinewhoop to acro better is to take weight off it. So if you're flying it with like a GoPro and a 1300 6S or something chonky, try flying it with no GoPro and a very, very light battery like a 1000 or 1100 6S and see if it does better. Cinewhoops are always sort of, the goal of the Cinewhoop is to make it as small as you can get it. And so they're always like really on the edge of what they have enough power to do. And as soon as you start pushing them hard, they hit the limits. One of the motors goes into saturation. And basically what I mean by a motor going into saturation is one of the motors is as fast as it can go. And then the whole thing has to sort of stop and fall out. Because as soon as one motor can't go any faster, the rest of the motors can't go any faster either. And basically limits the total amount of authority you can get from a Cinewhoop. Rvisual.cz, thank you for 500. Czech Karuna? Is it Czech Karuna? Ooh, thank you so much. 500 Czech Karuna. Appreciate that. Many people throw a drone into angle mode and just arm it. I've tried throwing it like this, but the drone never wants to arm for me. Very interesting question. You're literally talking about toss launches. I spent an afternoon doing toss launches once upon a time, and I found that I could get the drone to arm most of the time, but sometimes it wouldn't arm, and I could not figure out why. So, if we're talking about the gyro threat, so the first thing that needs to happen is that the gyro needs to initialize. So you need to power the drone up and set it somewhere stationary so the gyro can initialize. If you are powering it up and immediately chucking it, that's probably why it won't arm, because the gyro hasn't initialized. So you need to hear doot-a-doot, doot-doot, and then there's another little set of blinks from the flight controller that indicates the gyro has initialized. And if you're not waiting for that second little set of blinks, then that's why it won't arm. The other thing is that I found that if I winged it like a Frisbee, so it was just spinning really fast, it tended to not want to arm. So I would try to sort of launch it as gently as I could, right? So I didn't whip it so it's spinning. I would try to kind of just huck it into the air. I don't know if that's helpful. So it was kind of rotating as slowly as possible, and then it would be more likely to arm.
Also, don't forget small arm angle needs to be 180. So you need to have the arm angle, right?
Yes,
and then also make sure you're not throwing the quad and putting the throttle up before you hit the arm, because
that's a good one.
Instinctually be trying to push the throttle up. Those are both.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So arm angle 180, that's true. I didn't even think of that. I overlooked that because it was obviously if you're doing toss launches, you need arming angle 180. But no, it's not necessarily the truth that everyone would have thought of that. So good point. Thank you for Steve Tricks. And good point. Don't raise the throttle before you arm. Make sure the throttle's down. Very good point. Unfortunately, there's no way to test this except by just chucking your drone. And then sometimes it doesn't arm and it just falls and it bangs on the grass, and it makes for a really messy afternoon, I tell you what. So I would say try to rotate slower. What's your opinion on people taking existing frames and putting their own twist on them? A friend and me are working on our own OS5 and not selling them. Thank you for €5 VKTR. VKTR, my opinion is that if you're not selling them and you're just making them for your own use or for your own experimentation and learning, I don't think there is any moral problem with that or ethical problem with that. I think that once you start selling them and competing with the original, potentially there are ethical problems, although I think that I wouldn't make a blanket statement that that is always wrong, but I do think that's where you start to potentially be in a gray or maybe even a not gray area. That's my opinion. As long as you are not competing with the original frame and devaluing the work of the original creator, I think you're fine. You're good to go. And I think most creators would agree with you. They would be happy that you're learning from their frame. Do you think Walk Snail is on par with the first DJI V1? Thank you for $2, Quad City Bay Area. Quad City Bay Area, if you mean that DJI on the day of release in August 2019 with 25 milliwatt mode and the very first firmware, I mean, it's been a long time, but I would say probably Walk Snail is on par with that. BooTube, thank you for a $5 super chat. At what point do I frame swap? Currently using a Darwin FPV 5-inch frame, but I'm considering doing a few upgrades. At what point do I swap from the budget frame? Frankly, budget frames often fly as well as more expensive frames, especially if you're not pushing the PID tune like to the limits. The place where budget frames usually fall apart is in their durability. So if you find that you're just breaking arms all the time and you've replaced the arm 5 times and you're like, okay, screw this, I'm done, that's the time to upgrade. Speaking of broken arms, hold on. Interesting that you say that. And by you, I guess I mean interesting that I say that. But I did. Hey, guess what? Oh, no! No! Fly fish! Fly fish! Why? Why? Now, I know what you're saying. That's your 8S build. Surely you broke that in some spectacular crash. Unfortunately, I don't have DVR. So you would just have to take my word for it. I was I'd say I was at most 30 feet in the air. I'm thinking about the building I was flying over was a 1-story building with a roof. I was flying over the top of the building. I was probably 10 or 15 feet over the building. So I'd say I might have been 30 feet in the air. And somebody powered up and I lost video. And a fraction of a second later, I disarmed. It fell on concrete and asphalt. So, it was a solid hit. I gotta say, I was disappointed. And, hey, look, everything breaks. Maybe it was like a perfect hit. Okay? And, fair point, you'd rather have the arm break than the frame, right? Protect the electronics. Like, you can even see that the motor has a scuff on it. So, it was a fair hit. Oh, interesting. Well, that may be from when I tried to turtle mode. That's hard to judge. But, I gotta say, my gut reaction when I saw this was, I was surprised. Because the Volador is a heavy frame, and it makes up for its heaviness with sheer durability. And, was like, I thought the crash, I was surprised that crash broke this arm. It must have been just like a perfect hit. There you go. I haven't actually had a chance to test if everything works. The motor feels fine. So I'm assuming everything's fine. I just need to replace the arm. 30-foot drop onto concrete. Yeah. Yeah, okay. It broke. Everything breaks eventually. I guess I'm just surprised. Like, what are these, 6mm arms? On a frame so renowned for its durability that the arms actually seem like, well, I don't know. Anyway, I need a new arm for my Volador. Gonna have to get that order in.